Would you like to use less energy to get better results easier? Would you like to reduce the amount of clicks and keystrokes and searches you have to perform and come up with great sounding ideas much quicker in the process? Then stick around, because in this series I'm going to show you some of my favourite intelligent plugins that will let your computer do that shit for you. Hello and welcome back to another episode of TÄCHES Teaches. I'm Tash, and today I want to share with you one of my favourite intelligent plugins that allows me to pretty much sit back and let the computer make my tracks for me. The plugin we're going to be talking about today is Scalar 2. Now, I began to make this video a couple of weeks ago, but I'm rather glad I waited till now because Scalar 2 is out. If you don't know what the Scalar plugin is, it's pretty much like having someone who knows every scale and every chord with every possible extension in every possible inversion sat right beside you. Sounds pretty handy, right? Now, I've actually been using Scalar 1 for a couple of years now, and I absolutely love it. Scalar 1 was great because it allowed you to quickly sketch complex chord ideas and modify them simply and pretty non-destructively in seconds. It was really useful for working out what scales a particular set of chords could fit into, so that you could chordally experiment with different modes or more unusual scales easier. Scalar 2 brings in a whole lot more functionality to that brilliance and allows you to very easily assign to your chords intricate rhythmic patterns too, that would take bloody ages to try and create otherwise. It's certainly a lot more fun than Scalar 1, which felt more like a toolbox than this toy box. And I'll admit, Scalar 2 isn't quite bug-free yet, and it seems to keep crashing at pretty inopportune moments, and the interface has become quite clunky and convoluted. But, mark my words, it is an incredibly powerful tool, and I'm going to be using this for a long time. At least until they bring out Scalar 3, which will hopefully just automatically write music for me, that will move me to tears while I sit beside the pool and drink pina coladas. So without further ado, let's jump in to Scalar 2. Okay, so I just want to start off with a couple of quick tips on how to get the most out of Scalar. A lot of you may know how to do this, but for some of you, this may be like a aha moment. When you first load up Scalar, you can play it like an instrument. You know, you've got this rather smeary felt piano, or you could pick this horrible grand piano with just massive attack. I think the first and foremost, most important thing about Scalar is that it's not an instrument. It's a MIDI tool. So the first thing I'm going to show you how to do is to get the MIDI of Scalar playing through another instrument. So I'm going to load up here a Mark I vintage keys, which is a lot more interesting to my ears. So, you know, we can be playing with chords, but at least we're getting them straight away onto something a bit more appealing to the ears. So when I play on the Scalar channel, I get notes on the Scalar channel. If I play on this vintage keys, I get notes on the vintage keys. In order to get the MIDI from here to here, you have to change the output of Scalar 2. Instead of master, we go to notes to tracks, and we choose the instrument we want to send it to. So now, when I have the Scalar plugin record armed, even though I don't have the vintage keys record armed, I can now have the MIDI coming through. And this works as well for if you were to have some sort of chord. You can see here that that's playing fully on the vintage keys. Cool. Okay, second of all, it's important to note that Scalar does have this inbuilt play function where, you know, say I were to come up with a little chord progression here, I can press play and it will play through those chords, and the length of those chords will be defined by how long this chord duration is. Or you could put it on loop and you could play through and it will indefinitely loop through those chords. But I never use that, and instead I like to use Scalar almost like a sampler, you know, like a MIDI chord sampler. And a lot of people do this, the binding MIDI. If you click this little button here, C, you know, or the B section there, or A, what you end up having is the ability to play single notes on the piano and those to trigger chords. So if I press C2 on my keyboard now, I get the A minor chord. If I press D2, I get D minor. And if I press the E chord, I get E minor. So what that allows me to do is to play with the length of notes. That if I was just if I just had these chords in here now, and I said, okay, well I like those, I could just click this drag thing and I could drag that onto a channel and I could now have those chords. But it's completely lacking in humanization because they're just long block chords and the rhythm is just a bit, you know, all over the place. So what I like to do is I will then record notes onto the scalar channel, which will be single notes, which will then be converted to chords and then be sent to the vintage keys. So instead of having that drag MIDI function, I like to play things. And that quite difficult with the quantizing when you've got the screen recorder on. But you can see here that the spaces and where I've decided to like let go of notes earlier is adding a lot more groove. And of course I can then go in and I can change things and say, actually, maybe I wanted to have a little stab on that one as well. Okay, cool. So next up is how do we get the MIDI, the single notes here are being converted to chords, and then those chords are being sent via MIDI to the vintage keys. But I can't now just do drag MIDI, because the drag MIDI thing, the only thing it will do is it will give me, it's quite difficult with the size of my screen, but it will still just give me those full chords, and I don't want that. I want to have the full chords that I've played with this rhythm on the instrument. So you'd think that all I had to do was click record on here and the chords would come out. No? Well, no. So what you need to do is on the instrument that you're trying to receive the chords to, not only have you had to send the MIDI to the instrument, but you have to receive the MIDI on the instrument. So where it says all ins here, we just need to change that to scalar 2 and then the top option. And now when I record, I'm going to get those full chords with the timing that I played them in. Cool. So let's move on to a couple of ways that you can use scalar to come up with chords. First of all, I'm going to start with the scales section. And I'm just going to say, oh, well, today I want to make something in F minor. So I could now bind the MIDI and I could play through all of the chords in F minor by just pressing C to B on my MIDI keyboard. But what I like to do is to pick a few chords and then create an arrangement down here. So that instead of having to know, oh, well, you know, if I wanted to play F and then A flat, I would set that down here like that, so I can still just press C and D. And I would go through so it's just a sequential pattern on my keyboard. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to make a pattern using the first two chords. So we have an F minor and a G diminished. And those two chords are all you need to make a whole song. So let's try and make something that, you know, an 8-bar loop that's a bit interesting just using those two chords. So I'm going to go ahead and record here. Cool. So if I quantize that now, let's have a quick listen again. What I can do is I can copy that across, and I can have an 8-bar pattern of that. But if I were to just play that for 8 bars, it wouldn't be too interesting. I think it would be nice to have some sort of variation, even though we're using the same chords. So I'm going to take this third iteration of that, and I'm going to move that up to currently a section which we don't have bound to any chords. These are just single notes at the moment. But what I can do is I can go into scalar again, and I can say, on that third and fourth one, I want to play exactly the same chords, but I'm going to open up the edit view, and I'm just going to invert them up. So I'm going to take the lowest note in those chords and move them up. So the second note will be the lowest note. Now look what happens when I play this. Very cool. So I could go even a step further and add in another set of variation of that. So why don't we do another one here and another one here. And these ones I'm going to invert down one. Cool. So let's now start these ones. Obviously I could put them in a more logical order, but I'm just going to try it this way now. So we have... That's quite interesting, and considering it's still just the same chords, let's record that out now. Nice. So what we could also do, if I delete that MIDI clip, is we could change some of the the qualities of these chords. So instead of just being an F minor on the first one, which would be this one, I could go into variations here and I could say, oh, well, I want that F to be a little different. So why don't we do an F minor add 9? And for this one, and what's quite cool to note as well is that it will keep the voicings. So if you've changed the inversion or you've changed the octave, adding a chord over the top of it will stay like you first set it. So I'm going to add an F minor 9, add 9 to this first chord as well. And then let's see if there's anything in the G diminished section that could be quite cool. Yeah, why don't we add the G minor 7 flat 5. So we came up with a very simple chord progression just using the F minor scale, and now I'm just painting in some different colours. And why don't we change this second F minor to an F minor 7? That could be quite cool. So let's play through now and have a listen. More interesting. But you don't have to just start from scales. There are a lot of inbuilt preset chord banks that are incredibly powerful to use. So you can go to this song section as well. And oftentimes I'll start a project file and I have a kick in there just to give me a bit of rhythm, or I'll add some percussion, and then I just want to try and find some chords. Even if I just find 1 or 2 chords, that really does help me set a direction for where I want to go. So I'm just going to go here to the gospel section, gospel number 1. And I'm going to bind the MIDI to this A section and just play through with a kick, you know, just try and find a mood that I like. So my keyboard is not working. Oh, there we go. I need to... Okay. So these are a bit low, so I'm just going to bring the semitones up. Let's bring this up 5 notes. See, I quite like that. So what I could do is I could just record in. And then I could have those notes, you know, triggering this bind section up here. But again, sometimes I like to be able to use a chord here and then a chord that's over here. So I'll just pick out a few that I like. So let's have a quick listen to some of the others. I like that. So I like those, but I don't want to have to remember where they are. So what I do is, because I'm starting here, I'm going to put that down there, and I'm going to put that there, and I'm going to put that there, and that there. Now I'm going to bind the MIDI to the C section. And let's record a little pattern in there then. Oh, sorry. Okay, that could work. Let's play the clip. So maybe I could also swap out some of these chords, move them down. And at that point, maybe I think that this chord isn't quite right, so maybe I could try and swap it out with the other B major 13. I quite like that. That's cool. And again, I could do that same thing of then copying these across. And I could play with the inversions. So these could now go up a section. So I could have, instead of then... I could then have... Oh, sorry. Cool, you see what I mean? So I'm just going to clear this section now, and I'm going to show you another cool little feature when you start building chords from this chord set. Let's go to Disco 4, and I'm going to bind the MIDI to A again, and let's have a quick listen. So I think this would sound quite nice. Oh. Yeah, that's cool. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to record in a quick pattern. Nice. And of course we've got all that little rhythmic variation of the way that I played it and let go of the keys. Sometimes as well, if I just want to quickly not have to change the MIDI that I've done if I've bound it up here, I'll just put the same chords that I had in the same order in the top, and then I'll just bind the MIDI to C again. So you can see that this particular chord set has quite a particular voicing. If I were to just go here to the 7ths and play a C minor 7, that's what a C minor 7 in its most basic form sounds like. But this is quite a nice voicing. It's been modified to be more open. What if I wanted to add some more chords in? Let's look at what other chords I could play. So we have a 1 chord, we have the 6 chord, then we have the 5. What if I wanted to add in... Yeah, what if I wanted to add an F minor in? That F minor won't quite sound... sounds a bit dull. What I can do, and this is a fantastic little feature, is say I just really love the voicing of that, because look, we've got the A flat in the bass up here, and then look how high up the rest of the chords are. If I play the F minor, it's very closed. What you can do is you can right click on any chord that you like the sound of, and you can extract the voicing. What that means is it will just take the relationship of those notes or those gaps and allow you to just paste that on another chord. So if I make this F minor actually an F minor 7, I can just go up here and I can put that in there. All I have to do is right click on the chord and apply voicing, and let's compare the difference. Let's apply the voicing. It's put that F down lower. And then anything I do to it with the inversions, for example, it will still keep that voicing. Quite cool. This works really nice with some of these big fat chords, like in the gospel section again. Let's go back to that first chord. Like that. That's just absolutely beautiful. What I can do again is extract that voicing, and I could go back down here, and I could apply the voicing. Let's see what happens if I apply it to all of these chords. And this is just a really nice way of taking, you know, if we were to go back again to just the C, let's go to D minor scale, and I was to take just triads. Let's do a D minor, an A minor, and then a B flat major. I can right click, apply voicing, and apply voicing, and apply voicing, and now we have these 3 triads have suddenly become a lot fatter. And if those notes are then too low, we could go in here and we could just bring the octave up. Maybe we could play with the inversions. And then we could apply the voicing to this one as well. Very cool. Okay, next up I want to show you how you can use this perform section. And first of all, we're going to use the, under expressions, we're going to use the rhythms section. What rhythms are is they'll just play your block chord, all of the notes at once, but in different rhythms. So if I turn this off, and let's find a quick scale, I'm going to go for C, let's go for C Lydian. I'm going to do, let's do D Lydian. So I'm going to pick D major and C sharp minor. I'm going to bind the MIDI to C. Quite nice, but okay, in fact, let's just straight away, let's just record those chords in. Okay, that'll do. What what you can then do, once you've got those block chords in, you say, oh, well, I like that chord progression, but I want to try out some different rhythms. You can go to this expressions here, and we'll go to rhythms, and let's try out a few of these. These folders that go down are faster and more intense, so let's try something presto. Okay, I quite like that. What you can then do as well, of course, is change your voicings. Let's bring that down an octave and change the inversion. Let's make that second chord a C sharp minor, C sharp minor 7, maybe. And then if I go in here, I can then change with just single note. And of course, if I were to record onto the electric keys, I get that rhythm. And it's a really nice way then, once you've got that recorded, that you can go in here and you can make subtle changes to the individual notes. So why don't we move the second note up there, the third note up there. Let's move that up there, and that up there, and that up there as well. Let's see what that's like. And obviously if you were to go in and modify those notes, you can end up with some very cool things. Let's try another rhythm here then. So let's go to Volante, see some really fast stuff. And I'm just going to, without even recording in, I'm just going to go to the song section. Let's go to cinematic, and we'll go to sad ending. That sounds nice. Okay, so I'm going to bind the MIDI to A, and I'm just going to play through the chords and see if anything springs to mind, see if anything feels interesting. Okay, so instantly I'm like, that's a fucking vibe. So I could just go straight in here and I could put a C2 on that note. And now I've got... Okay, I'm really into that. And then we could change the note up. I think that's a really cool way to start a track, is to just find some chords and don't get too fancy with them, just play with the rhythm. Okay, another way to use that rhythm section is, let's bring a couple of these chords down. Let's find which ones we like. So I'm just going to turn the MIDI on for this channel. Okay, so I'm just going to record this, and I'm going to turn off that expression section for a sec. Let's remember that that's Volante Fretta. That's quite a nice one. And I'm just going to record in, I'm going to drag these down. Quite like those. So I'm going to bind the MIDI to C. And let's see. Okay, I quite like those chords. So what we can do is on the individual chords, instead of having this overall rhythm section on up here, we could go down to this edit section and we can go to the playback performances, and I can choose, because that's quite a short chord in the middle, maybe I want to have that one ring out, but then the other ones, we'll go here to expression, and then we'll go to fretta. Oh, it's nice that it's remembered, an expression fretta, and let's see what happens. Quite cool. So why don't we try something else as well? We'll go to the expression and we'll go to rhythms and see what marcato sounds like. And obviously these notes, because we've played them in, they will only play for as long as they're on. So if I legato these, that will take up the full space. And maybe we like that second section, we can also then speed it up so it happens twice as fast. That's quite cool there. Wonderful. Another thing that you can do is use the same chords on different instruments with different expression settings. So I've recorded out that little pattern which we had with the F minor and the G diminished. And I've got that on the electric keys here, which I've just labelled block chords, and that's just going to play through. But if I then go in here, I could just play the same thing. Or I could put the same pattern in, but I could change the expression setting. So there's a really nice one here under Performances Adagio called Breve. And one thing to note about these expressions is you can restart them off the beat to get different feels. So if I just hold this down, that's almost got that kind of cool Latin feel. But because of the fact that it doesn't quite have that jump again, you don't quite get that feeling. But if I were to record and I were to like sort of re-trigger the note myself a bit earlier, I can get some quite cool patterns. Let's try this. And it's, again, very difficult when I'm screen recording to get the audio to work. But I can say that if you have these on the beat, and that on the beat as well, and then that. Okay, so this should create for us that montuno kind of feel. I'm just going to copy that across as well. Move this up to here. Put that there. And if I make all of the notes touch, now what you can end up doing is, because we're restarting this note a little bit off the grid, listen to what happens. Here's a nifty little trick as well. When you've got that kind of montuno pattern happening, what I could do is I could go into these chords now and I could take all of the top notes and I could invert them down. So I'm just inverting everything the same amount down. Let's bring these chords up a bit. So now they sound like this. And in fact, why don't we also bring this this chord that happens back onto the grid, and that swing can happen in the montuno. What you could do as well is on the piano, I could add a multi-note below it, and a lot of that kind of like Latin montuno stuff, they octave it. So I'm just going to do one below as well and bring the velocity down on that, and then let's see what we've got. Cool, so we've got that pattern now. Why don't we try one more thing, and I'm going to copy this across, and we'll call that montuno. And on another instrument, why don't we get this time? Why don't we put an organ, and we can do something a little more rhythmic that doesn't follow that pattern. So let's just get rid of these second notes. And you can see how it's quite fun as well to not even have to play them in again. You just keep the same patterns and then you slightly alter them. I'm going to go into Scalar and let's see if there's another pattern. Why don't we pick... let's pick Accento. This could be quite cool. So let's have a listen to that. We could also then add a bit of colour to these chords. So let's go variations. Let's make that an F minor 9. and we'll make that an F minor 9 as well. And then these diminished chords, let's use... let's have a quick listen to what that sounds like now. Cool, so we now got this little pattern. Okay, very nice. We've looked at the rhythm and the performances section, but the phrases section is a little different because it also has kind of melodies on top of it, and there's a variety to pick whether or not that melody stays constant or whether it moves with the chords. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I really just like to use scalar as almost a sampler. You know, forget that it's MIDI. It's almost like when I press a key, as long as I hold it, it's going to keep playing. But if I like press short, it's very much like having chopped up an amazing sample and then having it at your fingertips. So it's quite nice sometimes to pick one of these phrases. I really like the con amore ones because they are quite, as you would suggest, loving. By default, a lot of these will be ×1, which means that if I were to play it at this speed, quite cool. I really like that. But some of them, they lend themselves to being double time, especially if you're making like house music. So I particularly like these two chords, which is the G flat major 13 and the C flat major 7, which is a B major 7. So let's just record something in with this then. So difficult when this is screen recording. So let's warp that MIDI just so it's in time. And notice how, you know, if I stop this short, then that expression pattern will stop as well. Or I could do just single stabs to get very nice, especially then if you, like we did before, you were to record out. Let's get rid of that second note actually. Let's just treat this like a full pattern. I mean, that's really cool. And you could even then go in as well and split this between two. Let's stop that scalar clip. And once you've then seen the patterns, you could say, okay, well, all of these are clearly like the chords. Those are the chord notes, so I could just delete those. Whatever, you get what I mean. And that allows you then to have just the melody that's being played. And if I were to move that over here, and then I turn off that expression setting, which one did we have it on? I could then do some of my inversion fun. I could go in here and I could say, well, I want that. Well, then we could make some of these arpeggios. We could make this into a 16th note arpeggio, and then this one could be an 8th note arpeggio. Quite like that being just 8th notes, in fact. And one of them could go up, one of them could come down. If you set these to quite low values as well, and you send this to a bass, for example, let me just put, let's put a polysynth. Come on. There we go. You can get bass lines as well. Let's set that to 4th notes triplets. And let's change the mode to, let's see, maybe double down. Let's see what that one sounds like. And then obviously you could do different patterns as well, where suddenly now this becomes an 8th note triplet. And let's change these actually just to up. And then that second part of the chord, you can start to I'd quite like to have that happen for the bass bit there as well. That sounds quite cool. So let's copy that first chord across to the 4th. This is a bit messy the way that I'm doing it, but let's go 8th note triplets. And the arpeggios are a really great way to end up with some bass lines. Very cool. Well friends, that's all we have time for today, but I do hope this video has been useful in giving you some inspiration in how you can use scalar in your productions. In the next video, I'm going to be talking about Atlas, a brilliant AI-powered drum sampler that allows you to create dream drum kits in seconds with no effort. If you liked this video, please remember to subscribe and turn on those notifications so you can keep up to date with all of the videos I'm going to be posting. As always, happy Saturday and happy creating.